You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill News Brief. And in a new report from the Epoch Times, in what I see as further confirmation that Meuller is definitely working with Team Trump. Andrew McCabe's FBI tried to re-engage Christopher Steele after Comey was fired. Transcript of congressional testimony by DOJ official Bruce Orr shows the FBI went back to disgraced source between Comey's firing and Mueller's appointment. In the days following the firing of FBI Director James Comey by President Donald Trump, the FBI, under Acting Director Andrew McCabe, sought to re-engage with former MI6 spy and author of the Steele dossier, Christopher Steele. The FBI's attempts to re-engage Steele, who had been fired by the FBI 6 months earlier for breaking protocol by talking to reporters, were soon thwarted by the appointment of Special Counsel Robert Mueller. McCabe appears to have been blindsided by the appointment of Mueller, who was appointed as special counsel on May 17, 2017, the day after a meeting with Trump and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein in the Oval Office. The appointment of Mueller shifted control of the Russia investigation from the FBI and McCabe to Mueller. Rosenstein would later retain ultimate authority over the probe, and any expansion of Mueller's investigation required authorization from Rosenstein. McCabe had been a key player in the FBI's counterintelligence investigation of the Trump presidential campaign, which relied heavily on information provided by Steele. The FBI also obtained a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act spy warrant on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page using the same information. Former Associate Deputy Attorney General Bruce Orr served as a key conduit in transferring information from Steele both before and after the FBI terminated Steele, along with information from Fusion GPS co-founder Glenn Simpson. On August 28, 2018, testimony before Congress by Orr, which was reviewed for this article, sheds new light on McCabe's involvement in the investigation. His testimony also illustrates how Steele and Simpson passed their information targeting Trump to the FBI, using Orr as an unofficial back channel. Orr, per his testimony, reported directly to then Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates. Prior to a series of demotions that occurred in December 2017 and January 2018, Orr held two titles: Associate Deputy Attorney General and Director of the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. Orr testified he had known Steele since 2007, when they met during an official meeting while Steele was still employed by the British government. After that, they maintained contact approximately once a year. Orr had also met with Simpson on various occasions over the years, and his wife, Nellie Orr, had also known Simpson for several years. A 2010 report by the National Institute of Justice listed the three as participants in a paper. Nellie Orr, who would join Fusion GPS in late 2015 as a Russian analyst, was listed in the report as working for the CIA's open source works as a researcher. On July 30, 2016, Bruce and Nellie Orr met with Steele and an unknown associate of Steele's. Almost immediately, Orr would initiate a meeting with FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe to detail his conversation with Steele. Also present at the meeting was McCabe's counsel, FBI lawyer Lisa Page, who would play a key role in the counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign. Shortly thereafter, on August 15, 2016, FBI agent Peter Strzok would send the now infamous insurance policy text referencing McCabe to Page. Later that same month, the FBI suddenly reached out to Steele without asking for the information in his possession. Orr would also meet with Simpson on or around August 22, 2016. At that point, Orr says in his testimony he was aware that his wife was working with Simpson's company as a contractor, that Steele worked for Fusion GPS as well, and that there were ties to the Democrats and Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. Orr would have another meeting with Steele on September 23, 2016, and would also meet either that same month or early October with Strzok, Page, and Justice Department DOJ career officials from the Criminal Division, Bruce Swartz, Zainab Ahmad, and Andrew Weissman. Orr testified that he was unsure whether Weissman was at this or a later meeting. Sometime in late 2016, Nellie Orr provided her husband with a memory stick containing the research she compiled while employed at Fusion GPS. Bruce Orr testified he gave the memory stick to FBI agent Joe Pienka. Nellie Orr had left Fusion in September 2016. Steele was terminated as a source by the FBI on November 1, 2016 for communicating with the media. Despite this, Bruce Orr and Steele communicated regularly for another full month until November 2017. Orr relayed all these communications with Steele to the FBI through Pkwy and possibly 2 other handlers. On November 21, 2016, Orr had a meeting with Stroke and Page and introduced to Pkwy, who had become Orr's FBI handler. Pkwy was also present with Stroke during the January 24, 2017 interview of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. The next day, November 22, 2016, Orr met alone with Pkwy. Orr would continue to relay his conversations with Steele to Pkwy, who then recorded them in FD 302 forms. During a meeting on December 10, 2016, Orr met with Simpson, who gave him a memory stick that Orr believed contained the Steele dossier. Orr passed that memory stick to Pkwy. Orr in his testimony detailed his interactions with Steele and Simpson, as well as his communications with officials at the FBI and DOJ. Notably, Orr repeatedly stated that he never vetted any of the information provided by either Steele or Simpson. He simply turned it over or relayed it to the FBI, usually to Pkwy. What Orr didn't know was that Pkwy was transmitting all the information directly to Stroke. Bruce and Nellie Orr met for a breakfast with Steele on July 30, 2016. In addition to the Orrs and Steele, there was a 4th individual, described by Orr as an associate of Mr. Steele's, another gentleman, younger fellow, I didn't catch his name. The topics covered at the meeting were discussed during testimony by Orr. In the July 30th conversation, one of the items of information that Chris Steele gave to me was that he had information that a former head of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR, had stated to someone, I didn't know who, that they had Donald Trump over a barrel. He had mentioned that Carter Page had met with certain high-level Russian officials when he was in Moscow. My recollection is, at that time, that Carter Page had already been in the press, and there had been some kind of statement about who he had met with when he went to Moscow. And so the first item that I recall Chris Steele telling me was that he had information that Carter Page met with higher-level Russian officials, not just whoever was mentioned in the press article. So that was one item. And then the third item he mentioned was that Paul Hauser, who was an attorney working for Oleg Deripaska, had information about Paul Manafort, that Paul Manafort had entered into some kind of business deal with Oleg Deripaska, had stolen a large amount of money from Oleg Deripaska, and that Paul Hauser was trying to gather information that would show that, or give more detail about what Paul Manafort had done with respect to Deripaska. Orr also testified that Chris Steele had provided some reports to the FBI, I think 2, but that Glenn Simpson had more. The information on Deripaska is particularly notable. The New York Times published the article Secret Ledger in Ukraine lists cash for Donald Trump's campaign chief on August 14, 2016, approximately 2 weeks after Orr's meeting with Steele. The article states Mr. Deripaska would later say he invested $18.9 million in Pericles in 2008 to complete the acquisition of Black Sea Cable. But the planned purchase, including the question of who ended up with the Black Sea assets, has since become the subject of a dispute between Mr. Deripaska and Mr. Manafort. Steele wrote a document on August 22, 2016, to be included in his dossier that detailed payments to Manafort from former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych. Steele had known Deripaska since at least 2012 when he was hired by Deripaska's U.S. lawyer, Adam Waldman, on behalf of Deripaska to assist in a lawsuit filed by a business rival, according to an article by John Solomon for The Hill. In late 2014, Steele and Orr met in Washington to discuss cultivating Deripaska into an FBI informant on Russian organized crime, according to the New York Times article. This wasn't disclosed during Orr's testimony. In 2015, Steele helped set up a meeting between Deripaska and the FBI, but wasn't directly involved in the meeting itself, according to the New York Times article. Orr, however, was personally involved in the meeting, which reportedly involving Deripaska on the connections between Russian organized crime and Mr. Putin's government, as well as other issues. During a series of communications in early 2016, Steele appeared to be lobbying Orr on Deripaska's behalf, and Waldman's name was also mentioned. Notably, the FBI investigation dubbed Crossfire Hurricane was formally opened the following day by FBI agent Strzok. Sometime in early 2016, following closely on the July 30th breakfast meeting with Steele, Orr reached out to McCabe in order to set up a meeting to detail the information he had been given by Steele. The meeting took place in McCabe's office. Question: shortly after you met with Christopher Steele on July 30th, you had a meeting with Andy McCabe and Lisa Page. Orr answers yes. You said that meeting was at Main Justice? Or, no, the meeting was in Andrew McCabe's office. It was in Andrew McCabe's office? Yes. And it was sometime, you believe, in August, because it was shortly after the meeting with Christopher Steele? Probably, yes. And that was because at that point in time, you wanted the FBI to have that information and be aware of your contact with Christopher Steele? Yes. Did anyone prompt you to call Andy McCabe? No, I don't think so. I think that was me, just me. Present in this meeting was Lisa Page, Assistant General Counsel at the FBI. Orr had known Page for some time, as she previously had worked under the supervision of the DOJ for a period of 5 to 6 years. During the questioning, Orr noted that he had not informed his boss, Deputy AG Sally Yates. It is also unclear if then FBI Director Comey was ever informed of the meeting. Sally Yates, she was your boss, right? Orr says yes. You said she didn't know that you were talking to Steele or Simpson? Correct. How do you know she didn't know? Well, I didn't tell her. Okay, so she may have known from some other source. Possible. Well, you would think she would, because over at the FBI, Andy McCabe knew that you were talking to Steele and Simpson as early as August of 2016. Right, but I don't know that. If anything, was conveyed to Sally Yates. Andy McCabe knew. Did Jim Comey know in August of 2016 that you were talking to Christopher Steele and Glenn Simpson? I don't know. Steele was terminated by the FBI as a source on or about November 1st, 2016. Following Steele's termination, Orr was provided with an FBI agent, Pkwy, on November 21st, 2016, who would serve as his handler. Orr transmitted all of his communications with Steele and Simpson to Pkwy, who would then relay the information to Strzok. Question. Was Joe Pkwy your go-between in December when you got additional information from either Christopher Steele or Glenn Simpson in getting it to the FBI? Joe Pkwy, I believe, was my contact at that time, yeah. You immediately go to Joe Pkwy, who immediately goes to Peter Strzok. Are you aware of that? No. Steele's information was going directly to Strzok after Steele had been terminated by the FBI as a source. Orr testified he thought the FBI was verifying Steele's information, but Comey said the dossier remained unverified until December of 2016. Meanwhile, Orr continued to transfer information from Steele to the FBI through 2017. There were 12 meetings, primarily with Pkwy, documented in a series of FD 302s that ran from November 22, 2016 until May 15, 2017. The 302s, summaries of FBI interviews, haven't been made public. Orr says, so they, Strzok and Page, understood that I had received information, and they said they would get me an agent to talk to who would write the stuff down and do whatever. Well, I don't know if it was written down, but that they would give me an agent to speak with and provide the information. Is that why there are 302s of you in this file? I believe so. That is the agent interviewing you? Yes. Orr testified that he maintained contact with Steele beyond the date of the final 302, but this was either not documented in FBI 302s or the 302s weren't provided to congressional investigators. Question. On page 2 of the letter, it lists 12 separate dates and 302s where the FBI interviewed you, indicating the first interview took place on November 22, 2016, and the last one on May 15, 2017. Is this list of interviews and dates generally consistent with your recollection? Orr says yes. The caveat I would say is I continue to have some conversations with Christopher Steele after May 15, 2017. I've reported all of those to the FBI, but I do not see any 302s relating to those conversations. Orr later testified that he maintained contact with Steele and relayed the content of that contact to the FBI into November 2017. Orr also testified that he wasn't aware the FBI was documenting his meetings in 302s. Question. Do you know anything different about those interviews or those 302s as to why they wouldn't have been produced in response to a request by members of Congress? Orr says, I don't know if they did 302s later on. A lot of these conversations seem less substantive, but I don't know. I didn't know about the original 302s either. Did you continue to meet with the FBI to discuss your conversations with Mr. Steele all the way up through late November of 2017? Correct, Orr says. On at least 2 occasions in 2017, Orr was provided with a new FBI handler. Most of his meetings took place at FBI headquarters, but Orr had also had later meetings at the Washington field office. And who at the Washington field office conducted an interview? I cannot remember names. But it wasn't Pkwy? Right. So it was somebody, another agent or agents at the FBI's Washington field office? My recollection is at least on 2 occasions I was handled on to a new agent. The information flow between Orr and Steele typically went in one direction. Steele would provide information to Orr, who would then provide it to the FBI. Question: was there an unofficial back channel that was acknowledged by the FBI that they knew you were the unofficial handler for Chris Steele after that termination? I don't know if you can characterize it that way. All I can say is I would get calls from Chris Steele and I would pass it on to the FBI. But in May 2017, the direction changed. Did the FBI ever encourage you to reach out to try to get additional information from Steele? Yes, there was one occasion. So there was a coordination. If they're reaching out to you, then there's obviously this channel that has been at least unofficially acknowledged. Orr says, on one occasion, when I talk to the FBI, I tell them I got a call from Chris Steele. They said, oh, next time you talk with him, can you ask him if he's willing to meet with us? And I conveyed that back to Chris Steele. After he had been terminated. Correct. The FBI, which had maintained that when it uncovered a credibility issue with Steele, it immediately severed contact, was now looking to reestablish direct contact. In May 2017, the FBI suddenly decided to reach out to Steele through Orr. The re-engagement attempt came 6 months after Steele had been formally terminated by the FBI on November 1st, 2016. The matter, which was discussed at several points during Orr's testimony, was highlighted during a review of some text messages between Orr and Steele. Question: the next page, 2 months forward, 5:15, 3/4 of the way down, having now consulted my wife and business partner about the question we discussed on Saturday, I am pleased to say yes, we should go ahead with it. Best, Chris. Go ahead with what? The FBI had asked me a few days before, when I reported to them my last conversation with Chris Steele, they had asked, would he, next time you talk with him, could you ask him if he would be willing to meet again? So this is the re-engagement. Yes. The texts that are being referenced were sent on May 15, 2017, and referred to a request that Orr received from the FBI to ask Steele to re-engage with the FBI in the days after Comey had been fired on May 9th. So you have asked him, will he re-engage with the FBI? Yes. And he says, talked with my wife, I'm in. You say, thanks, we'll let you know, and we will follow up. Yes. Thanks again. I chatted with my colleagues, and can you give an update when you have a minute? What was that about? Was it about that subject? Yes. So that all happens on May 15th. Yes. Several days prior, on May 12, 2017, Orr and Steele exchanged a series of text messages published by John Solomon of The Hill that appear to detail Orr reaching out to Steele following the FBI's request for re-engagement. Orr says, thanks again for your time on Wednesday. Do you have time for a short follow-up call sometime this weekend? Steele says, yes, of course. Perhaps sometime tomorrow. When might suit? Orr says, would 3 p.m. work? Your time? I'm pretty open, so just let me know. Thanks. Steele says, fine, or possibly even at 2 p.m. our time if that works for you. Best. Orr says, 2 p.m. your time is good. It will be quick. Thanks. The next text message is a response from Steele on May 15, 2017. Steele says, B, having now consulted my wife and business partner about the question we discussed on Saturday, I'm pleased to say yes, we should go ahead with it. Best, C. Orr says, thanks, I will let them know and we will follow up. Comey was fired by Trump on May 9, 2017. This appears to have been the precipitating event that led the FBI to suddenly attempt to reestablish contact with Steele through Orr. This was the only time the FBI used Orr to reach out to Steele. Notably, McCabe was now acting FBI director. On the morning of May 16, 2017, Rosenstein reportedly suggested to acting FBI director Andrew McCabe that he secretly record Trump. This remark was reported in a New York Times article that was sourced from memos from the now-fired McCabe. Rosenstein immediately issued a statement denying the accusations. An unidentified participant at the meeting, in comments to the Washington Post, framed the conversation somewhat differently, noting that Rosenstein responded sarcastically to McCabe, saying, "What do you want me to do, Andy? Wire the president?" The comments by Rosenstein allegedly occurred at a meeting where McCabe was pushing for the Justice Department to open an investigation into the president. Note that just 5 days earlier, McCabe had publicly testified that there was no obstruction, stating that there has been no effort to impede our investigation to this date. Following Rosenstein's meeting with McCabe, Trump met with former FBI Director Robert Meuller, reportedly as an interview for the FBI director job. Rosenstein was present for that meeting as well. Trump, in an interview with the New York Times, said this about the meeting. We were interviewing replacements at the FBI. Did you know Meuller was one of the people that was being interviewed? Now what happens is Meuller leaves the office, Rosenstein leaves the office. The next day, Meuller is appointed special counsel. The idea that Meuller would be considered for the FBI director role seems highly unlikely, although not entirely impossible. Meuller had previously served as the FBI director from 2001 to 2013, 2 years beyond the normal 10-year tenure. In 2011, President Barack Obama requested that Meuller stay on as FBI director for an additional 2 years, which required special approval from the Senate. We still don't know what was actually said at the meeting between Meuller, Rosenstein, and Trump. On May 17, 2017, the day after Trump's meeting with Meuller and the day after Rosenstein's encounter with McCabe, Rosenstein appointed Meuller as special counsel. In doing so, Rosenstein took the Trump-Russia investigation out of McCabe's control. On the one hand, McCabe testified that there was no obstruction from Trump, yet just 5 days later, McCabe was attempting to convince Rosenstein to go along with his efforts to open an obstruction investigation into the president. Events suggest that McCabe's efforts were met with alarm from Rosenstein, who responded by appointing Meuller as special counsel. Rosenstein may have also informed Trump of McCabe's intentions. I bet he did. This is getting juicy. Rosenstein would now retain ultimate authority over the probe, and any expansion of Mueller's investigation required authorization from Rosenstein. Text messages to or from Steele provide some hints and highlight an abrupt pullback by the FBI. In June 2017, Steele sent Orr the following text. "We are frustrated with how long this re-engagement with the Bureau and Meuller is taking. There are some new perishable operational opportunities we do not want to miss out on." Steele sent another text to Orr on November 8, 2017. "I am presuming you've heard back nothing from your colleagues at the special counsel colleagues on the issues you kindly put to them for me. We have heard nothing from them either. To say this is disappointing would be an understatement." Orr testified that at some point during 2017, Steele did speak with somebody from the FBI, but I don't know who. Steele's bias against then-candidate Trump have been reported in the media. Orr testified that he relayed these to the FBI prior to the election. Prior to the election, when I spoke with Chris Steele, I got the sense he was very alarmed by this information, which I think he believed to be true. And so I definitely got the impression he did not want Donald Trump to win the election, Orr said in his testimony. I don't recall the exact words. I definitely had a very strong impression that he did not want Donald Trump to win because he believed his information he was giving me was accurate, and that he was, as I said, very concerned, or he was desperate, which is what I then told the FBI, Orr said. Orr later testified that he informed the FBI of Steele's bias, along with details of his wife's employment with Fusion GPS and Fusion's political mandate, prior to the October 21st, 2016 FISA application made on Trump campaign volunteer Carter Page. Question. So the record is clear. What the Department of Justice and the FBI was aware of prior to the first FISA application was your relationship with Christopher Steele and Glenn Simpson, your wife's relationship with Christopher Steele and Glenn Simpson, Mr. Steele's bias against Mr. Donald Trump, Mr. Simpson's bias against Donald Trump, your wife's compensation for work for Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS, correct? Right. So just again, to reiterate, when I spoke with the FBI, I told them that my wife was working for Fusion GPS. I told them Fusion GPS was doing research on Donald Trump. You know, I don't know if I used the term opposition research, but certainly that was what I tried to convey to them. I told them this is the information I had gotten from Chris Steele. At some point, and I don't remember exactly when, I don't think it was the first conversation, I told them that Chris Steele was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected. It turns out that Orr personally told Deputy Director McCabe of his concerns about possible bias during the initial August 2016 meeting. Question. So in August of 2016, you tell Andy McCabe that you're concerned because your wife works for Fusion GPS, and that's where you're getting the information. Orr says, I wanted Mr. McCabe to know that there was a possible, that he, conflict of interest, or appearance thereof, yeah. So there's a possible conflict of interest in August of 2017 before a FISA warrant is actually initiated. I think I did not mean to say conflict of interest. What I would say is that in evaluating any information that I transmitted to the FBI, I wanted the FBI to be aware of any possible bias. So you believe there was the possibility of bias? Yes. We know that Steele had been interacting with the FBI prior to Orr's July 30th, 2016 meeting with Steele. FBI agent Michael Gaeta traveled to London on July 5, 2016 for the express purpose of obtaining Steele's initial 2 documents on Trump. Notably, it isn't fully known to whom in the FBI that Gaeta transmitted Steele's documents. The counterintelligence team didn't receive them until mid-September. Gaeta, an FBI agent and assistant legal attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Rome, had known Steele since at least 2010, when the former spy provided assistance in the FBI's investigation into the FIFA corruption scandal. But following Steele's meeting with Gaeta, there had been no further contact with Steele by the FBI. After nearly a month, Steele initiated the July 30th breakfast meeting with Orr. His tactic appeared to work. Following Steele's July meeting with Orr and Orr's meeting with McCabe and Page in early August, the FBI was now fully re-engaged with Steele and, by association, Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS. According to a House Intelligence Committee minority memo released on January 29, 2018, Steele's reporting didn't reach the FBI counterintelligence team until mid-September 2016. All right, for those of you who are still with me, I am going to stop there because there is hours and hours and hours of additional Bruce Orr testimony. But I think it's obvious that when the Meuller investigation was begun, the FBI panicked because they no longer had control of it. And they clearly did not like being in that position. I think they also were very frustrated that the investigation was not proceeding in the way that they wanted it to. Despite all of the things that they had done to entrap Donald Trump, to try and get him to be prosecuted on something, it wasn't happening. So that's why I think that Meuller and his team are actually working on Team Trump. You can see through the testimony that I read there, the information that's presented in this article, and I think it's becoming more and more obvious. So what do you think? Do you guys think that it's possible that Meuller and his team could be working for Team Trump? If Meuller wasn't working for Team Trump, then I think that he would have been much more forthcoming and eager to work with the FBI, because the FBI had a takedown Trump operation already on the books. I think that if Meuller was not working for Team Trump, I think that he would have gone straight into exactly what the FBI already had laid out on the table. Well, everyone, thank you once again for joining me. I am Red Pill 78, the corruption detector, and it was your Red Pill News Brief. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.